All stand. The Coronial Court now stands resumed. Please be seated.
Your Honour, we've just had some discussions in the break, in particular with Dr. Freckleton and myself, and we've raised it with some of the parties. Given that and it's submitting an approach slightly different from that which Dr. Dwyer has suggested to you last, given that the matter is up in the Supreme Court, in our submission, to ensure that there's no technical issue that gets in the way of the matter being resolved at that hearing, given that Dr. Dwyer has in fact asked a question which the witness has refused to answer, and given that an explanation has been given to it, in our submission it would be of some utility if Your Honour ruled in relation to that question and indicated whether your reason in ruling number 5 as to penalty privilege is part and parcel of that direction, and that Your Honour directs him, if Your Honour feels that it's appropriate, under section 41(1)(c) to answer that question. In our submission, that would be of some utility in ensuring that we're not wasting time going back and down on jurisdictional questions. I understand that that's a view supported by at least some of the others at the bar table.
Your Honour, I pressed the submissions that I made before the break. In my respectful submission, there is going to be no technical difficulty in the Supreme Court. I can't see it, and in my respectful submission, given you've got 3 working days before the Supreme Court hears, it would involve a complex judgment to deal with each of those issues now. It's not necessary, and in my respectful submission, not appropriate in circumstances where we're waiting for a guidance of the Supreme Court.
Well, there is some technical difficulty aspect to it, because indeed the Attorney General has sought fit to object to Constable Rolfe's application to be joined as a plaintiff on the very fact of potential hypothetical nature of the claim and or the artificiality of it not yet being taken and ruled upon.
But the claim's not taken.
The claim's been taken.
The claim has been taken.
And the basis has been very thoroughly identified in the list of 14 topics. It's no longer hypothetical.
No, Your Honour, it's not, but I'm simply imploring on you to make a ruling in respect of what I took you through in the test and the task you must approach in relation to section 38. Simply make that observation.
Yes.
For the record.
Thank you. I note those submissions. However, today, Constable Rolfe has objected to giving evidence in relation to 14 topics of evidence, which is set out in a schedule that is being tendered on the application as Exhibit 22. The basis for Constable Rolfe's objection is that the answers he may give in respect of those topics might expose him to a disciplinary penalty under the Police Administration Act. Constable Rolfe submits that he is entitled to claim the privilege and that Section 38 of the Coroner's Act does not modify that privilege. However, in ruling number 5, I held that to the extent the penalty privilege applies in this inquest, Section 38 of the Coroner's Act modifies the privilege. In 3 business days on the 22nd of November 2022, the Supreme Court will consider the correctness of that conclusion. I'm satisfied that in respect of some of the topics over which Constable Rolfe has made the claim of penalty privilege, the proposed examination might expose Constable Rolfe to a disciplinary penalty under the Police Administration Act. However, in light of the Supreme Court proceedings, in my view, it is not necessary to determine whether there is a proper basis for Constable Rolfe's concern in respect of every category, nor is it necessary to determine whether I would offer Constable Rolfe a certificate under Section 38 in respect of the of the claims for which there may be a proper basis. For the reasons given by Mr. Officer, each of the questions I'm asked to resolve today gives rise to a number of complex issues regarding the nature of the scheme for the taking of disciplinary action under the Police Administration Act. Some of those questions have been the subject of conflicting authority in the Supreme Court of the Northern Territory. In light of the fact that the Supreme Court will consider whether Section 38 applies to any objection for which there may be a proper basis, it is appropriate to defer resolving those questions until after the Supreme Court confirms whether Section 38 applies to this application. Depending on the outcome of those proceedings, it may be that there is no occasion to consider the application of Section 38 of the Coroners Act. In addition, the Supreme Court may provide guidance regarding the matters that would bear upon how I may be asked to apply Section 38 in this case. Accordingly, in my view, it is appropriate that I respect those proceedings and defer the resolution of the objection until after the Supreme Court has determined the application before it.
Your Honour, I think my learned friend has an application to make with respect to Exhibit 22. That is requesting a non-publication order. There's no interim non-publication order over that document at this stage.
There is no interim non-publication order in respect of any of the documents, other than the name of the child, and I made an interim order in relation to the name of another person.
Yes.
If I'm not making that application.
Oh, I see.
Just wasn't sure whether.
Your Honour, just before we go then, I understand, of course, as do my learned friends at the bar table, Your Honour will not force Constable Rolfe to answer any other questions, and I don't wish to fragment my cross-examination in any way. I just want to ask a couple of following questions in relation to the summons so it's clear to everybody in court. Constable Rolfe, you attended court today in response to a summons to appear in the Coroner's Court, correct?
Correct.
You understand that's a legal obligation to appear in court?
Yes.
And you respected that legal obligation, of course, by being here today.
Yes.
You appreciate that you are, although you're not being asked to answer any more questions today, you are not being released from that summons. You understand that?
Yes.
And so you will be obliged to come to court and answer questions at a later date. You understand that?
Yes.
Your current medical certificate, I think, takes you to the 9th of December. Is it likely that you will return to work after that time?
No.
So you are not likely to be in Darwin when you return to court? Is that
No.
right? Do you intend to return to the Northern Territory Police Force?
Pardon?
Do you intend to return to work at all in the Northern Territory?
Ever?
Ever?
Potentially.
In any event, wherever your summons is served, you understand it'll be a legal obligation for you to attend.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Constable Rolfe, you're excused from giving any further evidence today, but as explained by Dr. Dwyer, you are still on your summons to give evidence in these proceedings, and counsel assisting through your counsel will let you know when you're required to return for further examination.
Understood, Your Honour.
So you're excused for today, but you're not excused from your summons to attend and give further evidence.
Yeah, understood.
Your Honour, might we adjourn briefly now? There's another witness who's coming to give short evidence, but we'll need to get him on the video link. So if we might just adjourn for 10 minutes now. Yes.
Before everyone goes, I said please to withdraw for today's proceedings.
Yes, certainly.
All set.
Even better, makan to Walker.
Doing not got enough time to go to the toilet.
Yes, you would.
Thank you.
Hello, Officer Kirkby. You can hear and see the courtroom?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, really.
I'm just going to put you on mute until Her Honour the Coroner returns to the courtroom, okay?
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
Hey, will I hear Winston?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Is that 5 minutes? Maybe 5?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Close. Take that off. You're good to go. We'll be outside if you need us.
Thank you. Sit.
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. I recall Sergeant Paul Kirkby, who's on the AVL.
And I announce my appearance again for.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Sergeant, again, just before you give your evidence, do you promise to tell the truth to the court?
I do.
Thank you.
Sergeant, just for the record, could you please state your full name again?
Paul Michael Kirkby.
And you're currently physically located in Darwin to give evidence to us today, is that right?
Correct.
You last gave evidence in this court on the 25th of October this year, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
After you gave evidence, or in the course of giving evidence, you were answering some questions about an incident that occurred on or around the 3rd of September 2019. Just to remind you, that text exchange that you had with Constable Rolfe was that on the 3rd of September you texted him to say, sorry about the stress caused by losing my shit the other night. Stress you didn't need. You sorted it well. I just had enough. He was the second person to press my button that night. Constable Rolfe replied, bro, there was literally no stress about it. I'm all for that shit. I've done the same thing to you more than once before. I'm always ready to make my camera face the other way and be a dramatic cunt for the film, ha ha. You recall that exchange?
The text, yeah.
Yes, and you recall that on the last occasion when you were giving evidence in this court, I asked you about the circumstances that caused you to lose your shit the other night that you were texting Constable Rolfe about, correct?
Correct.
And you gave some evidence about what you recalled of that incident, correct?
Correct.
And I asked you some questions about whether or not that incident would have been written up in your notebook. You recall those questions?
I do.
And you gave a response that indicated you believed you would have written something in your notebook about it, and you were prepared to have a look for that notebook to assist the court.
Correct.
In relation to that, you've produced a statement to assist Her Honour, which is dated the 2nd of November this year. Is that right?
Correct.
In your statement, you say this. I explained to Her Honour, that my notebooks are kept in my locker and I would or should be able to locate them. I further explained that I had lost one notebook as it had gone through the wash while still in the pocket of my police pants. You go on to explain at paragraph 9, after giving evidence at the Walker Coronial, I returned to work in Darwin on Thursday the 27th of October. I located my notebooks in my police duty bag. This had been stored in my old office while relieving as officer in charge of the Darwin police station. In the bag, you say, I located 9 police notebooks that covered February 2015 through to May 2019. I would therefore have commenced using a destroyed notebook in May 2019. Sergeant, you could not locate any notebook which covered the period of May 2019 through to September 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why is that?
That would have been the notebook that went through the wash.
Between June 2021 and December 2021, you relieved as the senior sergeant in charge of the Darwin police station. Is that right?
Correct.
What you say in your newest statement is that you believe that sometime in early December 2021, your wife washed your police uniform without realising that your notebook was still in the pants. Whereabouts in the pants did you keep your police notebook?
The cargo pants, Your Honour. So it would have been in the side pant pocket against the thigh.
Do you have a recollection that that was always where you kept your police notebook around 2021?
Yes, that's generally where I kept it. I have a that's where I kept it, just in my right thigh, I guess, side pocket.
Those cargo pants, they're part of your official police uniform, is that right?
Correct.
So when you were out on jobs, you would put the notebook in the pocket of your police uniform, correct?
But generally, it was always there.
And would you then transfer that pocket to somewhere else? Notebook, I beg your
Sorry?
pardon. Would you then transfer that notebook to somewhere else generally before the pants were washed?
Generally when I get home, I would take the notebook out, and just on the kitchen bench, there's a bowl. I would put the epaulets, like these things, the notebook, my swipe card, things like that, just in the bowl.
So you would take your epaulets that you point into your shoulder, the stripes on your shoulder and the bands, and
Correct.
your keys and your passcode, etc., and take them home with you at the end of each shift. Is that right?
Correct.
And you take your uniform home with you at the end of each shift, correct?
Correct.
And your general practice in 2021 was to take your notebook home with you as well. Is that right?
Correct.
Or has that always been the case during your policing career in the Northern Territory?
No, if I had my uniform, sometimes I would, in Alice Springs, I had a locker. I would run to work, bike to work, and whatever. And I would have a shower at work, and everything would be in my locker.
Did you have a locker when you worked as the senior sergeant in charge of the Darwin police station in 2021?
I did, but yes, I did.
Was it your general practice to take your notebook out of your pants pocket and keep it in the locker, or not when
No.
you were in Darwin?
No.
Why not?
No, it would stay in my pocket, and I would take it home.
Why would it stay in your pocket in Darwin and not stay in your pocket when you were in Alice Springs?
At Darwin, I just didn't use the locker.
Why not?
I didn't really need to. My uniform was slightly different. Generally, I wouldn't have an accoutrement belt.
You would have an accoutrement belt in Darwin or in Alice Springs?
In Alice Springs.
Did you keep anything in your locker in Darwin?
I not really. There were some things, maybe some items of uniform, deodorant if I needed it. If I was going to have a shower during the shift, or
Why was it different in terms of the storage of your notebook, whether you had your accoutrement belt on or not as part of your uniform?
I would take my accoutrement, but I wouldn't take that home. So in Alice Springs, when I finished my shift, I would take everything off, put it in my locker. If I rode my bike home, obviously I didn't do that in uniform. And in Darwin, obviously it was 25 k's or 20 k's to work, so I would drive.
What is your police duty bag?
It's when you go out on shift, it's just a bag. It's a canvas bag. It's rectangular. Sometimes you can get them from like the 511. They do police gear, or you can get it from I think there's a general store in Darwin, and it's basically everything you need to go out on shift.
Did you store any police notebooks in your police duty bag?
I did. Well, that's where I found them. From early 2020, I moved from Darwin to, I moved from Alice Springs to Darwin, and I had a locker there. Then, when COVID hit, I got moved from the watch house at Darwin to the watch house at Palmerston. From Palmerston, then I went and I worked, it was called Operation Crown, was to do with the all things COVID. And so I moved into the PMC, the Peter McCauley Centre, the college. And so I was moving, I think, 5 times in 2 years. And so I think I just kept everything in that bag. As opposed to a locker. Sometimes I would have to get the locker back. Twice I had to get the locker back at Palmerston. That was short.
After you gave evidence on the last occasion, you located a number of notebooks in your police duty bag. stored in
Yep.
your old office. You located
Correct.
9 police notebooks that covered February 2015 through to May 2019. Where have you kept your police notebooks after May 2019? Apart from the one you've lost, where are the others?
After May 19,
Well, I'll go back a step.
Yep.
Once you lost a notebook in the process of your wife washing the clothes, you would have had to start another notebook, wouldn't you?
no, I haven't started one.
And why is that?
Just the roles I'm in, I don't need one.
Well, from June 2021 and December 2021, when you were the senior sergeant in charge of the Darwin Police Station, did you need a notebook?
I generally didn't need it because I was in an office. I didn't go out and about. I signed in a sign-in book, so I didn't need to keep track of shifts. I was Monday to Friday, so I just didn't need the notebook. But I still had it. I just never used it.
Sergeant, if you didn't need a
I didn't use it. Sorry, I didn't use it often.
Sergeant, if you didn't need a notebook between June and December 2021, you wouldn't be carrying one in the right pocket of your cargo pants, would you?
Yes, well, I did. I used it occasionally. There was some things. Sometimes I would go out and about. I used it for, there was some COVID, anti-COVID, anti-vaccination events, and I've used it on those occasions.
Well, then why didn't you get another one that you subsequently carried after your wife destroyed the first, or the one following May? If you occasionally used it, why wouldn't you get another one and keep that in your...
I don't know. I just never got another notebook.
When you gave evidence on the last occasion on the 25th of October, you were asked a question about whether or not you'd ever disposed of any notebooks since August 2019. This is at page 2425. And your answer is one has been disposed of. You were asked what date did that cover? Your answer was, I don't know, but that's the only one I remember. You were asked why, and you said, I left it in my shirt and it got washed. Was it your shirt, or was it your pants pocket, or are you just making this evidence up?
Initially, the shirts we used to wear, if I could just describe, had a pocket here. You could open that, it would sit beneath. It was like a separate layer. Notebooks would sit in there. The newer shirts don't have it. I think I said shirt or pants, but I know I said shirt, but I don't know.
Sergeant Kirkby, are you familiar with a general order which relates to the safekeeping of notebooks?
I read it maybe a week, 2 weeks ago.
Had you read it at any time prior to that?
I doubt it very much.
Why was that? It's dated the 1st of June 2012. Were you a police officer in the Northern Territory at that time?
2012?
Yes.
No.
When did, just remind us when you first became a police officer in the Northern Territory?
2013. I may have seen it at the college. It may have been something that we had to do. I really don't know. I can't remember.
You accept it was in place at the time that you started your training as a Northern Territory police officer, correct?
Yeah, I accept that, yes.
And do you recall receiving any training about the importance of keeping a notebook?
I imagine. I don't remember like something at the college, but...
Well, it's obvious, isn't it, that a notebook is an extremely important record for a police officer.
I agree.
When you read the general order on note-taking notebooks and diaries, I take it that there was nothing in there that particularly surprised you?
No.
The purpose of note-taking, it sets out paragraph 11 is that the ability to take and record notes is considered one of the single most important attributes that a member of the police force can develop. You'd agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Paragraph 15, the police issue notebook or diary is a valuable tool to use for the integrity of note-taking and storage of information. You agree with that?
I agree.
Paragraph 16, as a member of the police, as a police member, the requirement for taking and recording notes is of paramount importance. You'd agree with that?
I agree.
The object of a member's efforts is to ascertain all of the available evidence concerning the truth of a matter under inquiry in order to prove the commission of any criminal offence beyond reasonable doubt and enhance the reputation and credibility of the member of the Northern Territory Police Force. You accept that?
Yeah, I accept that.
The general order goes on to note that with respect to notebooks, paragraph 58, all police members have a responsibility in the care and safekeeping of their official notebook or diary as they are the property of the Northern Territory Police Force. You understand that?
I do.
And you understood that in 2021?
Yeah.
Just remind us what your role was in Darwin in 2021. The senior sergeant in charge of the Darwin Police Station.
Correct.
That's a responsible role, isn't it?
It is.
In fact, your at your level of seniority, you're responsible for reminding a number of officers of junior rank of their duties in relation to things like notebook taking.
I don't think I spoke to anyone about notebook taking, but yes, I accept that.
And you're responsible, aren't you, for ensuring that junior officers act with integrity?
I do.
The general order goes on to say, notebooks and diaries should be carried whenever on duty. They are for official use only. Do you say to the court that you did not carry your notebook at any time after it was destroyed in 2021?
I'm not sure of the date that it was destroyed. I think I can work out, and the statement from Sergeant Limbury probably helps more than mine. But maybe I did not carry a notebook. I think around that time I finished my role as the OIC at Darwin, and I moved to Palmerston Watchhouse. And in the watchhouse, I did not require a notebook again.
Were you on duty when you were in the watch house?
Yes.
So the general order says notebooks should be and diaries should be carried whenever on duty. Did you just ignore that when you were in the watch house?
I don't think I carried a notebook in the watch house ever.
So you just ignored that general order?
I guess I did.
Did you deliberately ignore the general order, or were you not aware of it?
I didn't think I was required. I didn't think it was needed for me to carry a notebook in the watch house.
So you weren't aware of the general order that said notebooks and diaries should be carried whenever on duty?
I probably was, but I didn't think I was required to. I didn't think it was needed for me to carry a notebook in the watch house.
Did anybody ever tell you that it wasn't needed to carry it in the watch house?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't recall.
The general order goes on, when a notebook or diary is nearing completion, members are to arrange to be issued with another. That's fair common sense, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Completed notebooks or diaries should be retained and kept in safe storage by the individual member. You understood that?
Correct.
It goes on to say that officers in charge of stations, sections, units are responsible for the security and custody of new notebooks and diaries. Who was the officer in charge of the station when you were in Darwin?
Me.
So, in fact, right at the time when you were responsible, for ensuring the safety and security of new notebooks and diaries, your notebook containing critical evidence in relation to an incident from 2019 went through the wash. Is that right?
Lots. Well, it would have had more stuff, but yes, that's correct.
It would have had a lot of other important stuff in it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Well, did you report that to anybody?
No, I've obviously told some people, but did I report it to my superior? No, I don't think I did.
Who was your superior in 2021 when you were in Darwin Watch House? Sorry, I draw that when you were the sergeant in charge of Darwin.
Would have been the superintendent in charge of the Darwin district.
Who was that person?
Superintendent Sheen, Daniel Sheen.
And you failed to report any loss of a police notebook containing critical information to Superintendent Daniel Sheen, is that right?
I may have, but I don't know. I can't say I did.
Well, we can inquire of Superintendent Sheen whether or not any report was made by you of a loss of a notebook, but to the best of your memory, you did not. Is that right?
That's correct.
Your counsel has provided a statement from Todd Limbury, who's a Northern Territory police officer, who was the administrative sergeant for the Darwin Division between November 2021 and August 2022. He says that until the 25th of November, you were officer in charge of Darwin City Police Station, and you worked closely together on the general day-to-day running of the division, as well as the planning of logistics of a number of operations. And he recalls a conversation he had with you during that time after an operation you'd run over a weekend, where Acting Senior Sergeant Kirkby told me he washed his notebook over the weekend. It came up because Acting Senior Sergeant Kirkby was picking pieces of paper off the front of his shirt. Is there any reason why you were carrying a notebook around that period of time, November 2020-21?
Yes, yeah, I used it. There were certain things. When I did go out from the office, I always had my notebook in my pocket. It was just start of the day, you put your notebook in, end of the day, you take it out.
And you're obliged to write the date for the start of every new notebook. So are you able to tell us what's the last date of the 9 notebooks you were able to find?
It was May. I can't remember the actual date. It was May 1919.
Do you have
2019.
Do you have it there with you, your notebook of May 2019?
No, I didn't bring them.
Are they in Darwin, or where are the 9 notebooks now located?
At the Darwin station, in my bag.
When I call for the production of the last notebook, which Sergeant Kirkby is able to locate, which ends, as I understand it, in May 2019. Can I clarify that date, Sergeant? Is it May 2019, which is the last entry into the notebook that you've been able to locate?
Correct. I can't remember the date, the actual day, but it was 05/19.
05/19.
May 2019.
Yep. Is there any reason why you would, I withdraw that. What rank is Todd Limbury?
He's a sergeant.
So he was of an inferior rank to you, or a lower rank to you in 2021?
I was acting senior sergeant, correct. He was at that stage acting sergeant.
Is there any reason why you would have told him about your notebook and not report it to the superintendent of Darwin Police Station at that time?
I would have told everyone in that office, probably.
So are you now
Sergeant Limbury just remembers.
Are you now saying you would have told Superintendent Sheen?
No, I said earlier I may have told him, but I don't know. I can't say with certainty, and I may have.
In the general order that I've referred you to, paragraph 55, it notes that supervisors should inspect notebooks and diaries on at least a monthly basis. With probationary and junior members, there may be more regular inspections to ensure compliance and assist with the correct development of note-taking skills. Divisional officers are to inspect notebooks and diaries periodically and ensure supervisors are inspecting their subordinates' notebooks and diaries on at least a monthly basis. A notation should be made at the time of the inspection recording the date of the inspection and name and rank of the inspecting officer or supervisor. What do you understand to be the meaning of the term supervisor? In the Darwin office in 2021, who was the supervisor?
There'd be lots of supervisors. There would be the patrol group sergeants. If there's a team of, you have Operation Lyra at the moment dealing with domestic violence, there'd be a sergeant in charge of that group. That person would be a supervisor. The senior sergeants would be supervisors of the sergeants. And
all right. So you were, as a senior sergeant, you were the sergeant who was supervised. I withdraw that. As the senior sergeant, you were the supervisor for sergeants in terms of their notebooks. Correct?
yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So, for example, the gentleman you just referred to, who was the administrative sergeant, did you supervise his notebooks?
No.
Your Honour, I have to object at this point. I didn't want to object earlier because there was some cross-examination really on a collateral matter of credit concerning this officer's inability to produce the notebook. I let that go. He's been cross-examined on that. Now we're ranging into general matters concerning his supervision of other police in and around the issues of the issued notebooks. That has no connection whatsoever with an issue in this inquest. It has nothing to do with Constable Rob. He's been cross-examined over 2 days on the previous occasions in relation to his supervision of Constable Rob. We're now getting cross-examination in relation to supervision in general. It's not a line of examination that can lead to evidence that assists, Your Honour, in making findings or commenting on matters relating to the circumstances of Kumanjayi Walker's death, or matters that Your Honour could comment on as being matters connected with it. We've moved well beyond that. It started as a collateral matter of credit. We've done that. Now we're one step beyond that into really matters completely and utterly irrelevant to the subject matter of this inquest.
I disagree with respect, and I press the question for two reasons. First is I am actually trying to assist Your Honour to get to the bottom of an incident that occurred immediately prior to the 3rd of September 2019 that was the subject of a significant text exchange. That's one. And the second is this: the systems that are in place for the Northern Territory Police in relation to taking notes about use of force incidents and inspection may well be the subject of a recommendation and is likely to be of critical importance, those systems. And this officer, with respect, has some important information to give as to whether those systems in fact are in operation at all, or whether or not the general order is disregarded for the most part in practice.
I think it's relevant to Mr. Robson in relation to those supervisory practices, and I'm going to allow the question.
As Your Honour, please.
Sergeant, as the acting senior sergeant, you said that you were responsible for supervising the notebook taking. This is at least under the general order. Notebook taking by sergeants. One of those sergeants was Sergeant Limbury. Did you ever inspect his notebook, for example?
Never.
Did you ever inspect the notebooks of any sergeants while you were in the Darwin office?
No.
Were you aware that you should be inspecting notebooks and diaries on a monthly basis, consistent with the general orders?
I understood that there was a general order that said notebooks were to be inspected. I never inspected anyone's notebook.
Why not, if the general order said that you should?
Well, so I never did.
Why not?
I don't know. I didn't really think it was I don't really know.
Well, did you think it was up to you whether or not you obeyed or ignored general orders?
Well, at this point, I might raise a question of privilege if the moment counsel assistant is now going to embark upon further this line of cross-examination, Your Honour. It could lead to disciplinary action, failure to observe operational orders, matters of that order.
I won't press the question. Someone else might do, Your Honour, if it's considered relevant, and then Your Honour might consider granting a certificate under those provisions. But I'll focus on the systems. Did you think that it was part of your role? That is, did you think it was actually a genuine expectation of you that you inspect the notebooks of sergeants?
Your Honour, can I just, perhaps before, no, I'm possibly a bit late, but if my learned friend's going to go on, can I just query, is the question in relation to General Order 55? And if it is, it doesn't specify sergeants, it talks specifically about probationary and junior members.
So I'm referring to the General Order JPS-01, note-taking, notebooks and diaries, which was promulgated on the 1st of June 2012. At paragraph 55, there's a subheading of inspection of notebooks, which refers to supervisors who should inspect notebooks and diaries on at least a monthly basis. My learned friend will recall a series of questions that I asked this witness as to who was a supervisor under the meaning of the General Order. And his answer was, unless I misheard, that supervisors would be sergeants or senior sergeants. That is, that there was a layer of supervision, and supervisors included him as senior sergeant responsible for supervising the sergeants underneath him.
Yes, and the section or General Order 55 goes on to talk about responsibilities for inspecting notebooks of probationary and junior members.
I've read that onto the record. I'll read it again. Supervisors should inspect notebooks and diaries on at least a monthly basis. With probationary and junior members, there may be more regular inspections to ensure compliance and assist with the correct development of note-taking skills.
And supervision is referred to in paragraph 7. Supervision of the implementation of the general order is the responsibility of all supervisors and managers within the Northern Territory Police Force.
Thank you, and I'll continue, but I think, Sergeant, the answer to your last question was no. That is, in relation to your understanding of your responsibilities, you did not think it was a genuine requirement that you actually inspect the notebooks and diaries of sergeants on a monthly basis. Is that right?
Correct.
So in relation to your supervisor,
have your notebooks ever been inspected?
Once, Your Honour, in 25 years.
When was that?
Oddly enough, it was here, and I think it was the OIC of Southern Desert.
When you say it was here, it was when you were a...
Sorry, within the NT.
Right.
So I would have been working Southern Desert, and it was the OIC were the senior sergeant in charge of Southern Desert.
who was that?
Senior Sergeant Michael Potts.
And was that a routine inspection? That is, how did that inspection come about?
I really don't know. It was, I came into town and went to see Senior Sergeant Potts, and that was one of the things he asked to do.
When you were in Darwin as the acting senior sergeant in charge of that police station, who was the divisional officer?
The superintendent, Daniel Sheen. And the commander in charge of the Darwin, I don't know the correct terminology, Commander Matthew, I can't remember his name, sorry.
Paragraph 56 of the General Order says that divisional officers are to inspect notebooks and diaries periodically to ensure supervisors are inspecting their subordinates notebooks and diaries on at least a monthly basis. I take it from the answers you've given so far that Superintendent Sheen did not inspect your notebook or diary periodically at any time while you were in Darwin. Is that right?
That's correct. He never inspected my notebook.
And you were there for 6 months, I think, as the acting...
I think it was 6 months, yes.
And in spite of the fact that the general order says that the divisional officer is to inspect notebooks monthly, yours was never inspected during that time, correct?
Correct.
And only inspected on one occasion in his whole career in the Northern Territory Police Force, including his postings in Alice Springs or in the surrounding areas, as I understand the evidence.
Senior Sergeant, are you aware that in the top of the notebook there is actually an instruction to Northern Territory Police that is in the physical notebook as to what should be done in relation to the notebook?
No, I write my name in it or my registered number. I've never read what's in, like, on the front page or anything.
I'm going to ask, putting the court officer on the spot here. In the brief of evidence at 7-115D, I apologise to the court officer, and otherwise I'll just read it onto the record. 7-115D, there's an example of Constable Rolfe's notebook. Melanie will send it to you. No, that's right. It's just the first page. Okay, so thanks. If you just scroll down, I think we'll see some writing, some typed writing on the second page. Right.
It's not transferring over from the screen view to the screen.
Oh, I see. I'll read it onto the record. It's my fault for not giving you any advance notice of that.
Yes, I think that's the button to click on at the top.
Okay. You don't know what button to press, no?
No.
I shall do. So, for the benefit of my friends, that reference is 7-115D. At the top, in the top cover of the front cover of the Northern Territory Police Force has the emblem of the Northern Territory Force. Just inside, it has room for your name as a police officer and your registered number. You recall that?
Yes.
That's coming up now. Thank you very much. Okay. So you see there the name of Constable Rolfe. In your circumstances, you'd write your name and your registered number, correct?
I do.
And the first direction or instruction is that in this book should be entered in the member's own handwriting such information as considered necessary for the performance of his or her duties. Goes on to say this book should always be carried when on duty so as to be ready for reference, and also to note on the spot any of the above particulars. No private memoranda whatsoever will be entered. I'll just pause there. That information is all obvious so far, isn't it?
Correct.
Goes on to say, as this book will be frequently inspected, the entries must be in a neat, concise and abbreviated form. There's a specific direction to officers inside the cover of their notebook that the book will be frequently inspected. Do you recall reading that at any time?
No, I don't.
So you're saying at no time during your period in the Northern Territory Police Force have you ever bothered to read the inside instructions of the notebook?
Correct. No, not that I can remember. I don't think I've ever read it.
This book should not be mutilated in any way. No page or part of a page is to be removed. When the book is finished and all cases finalised, it should be handed up to the member in charge of the section. On remote stations, the completed notebook should be forwarded to the divisional officer for retention. Do you agree, Sergeant, that that entry suggests that when you've finished each notebook, you need to give it to the member in charge of the section? That would have been you in Darwin, wouldn't it?
I don't think it means that. It says when the book is finished and all cases finalised. I think it takes a long time to finalise cases, and that might be an issue in relation to why notebooks are not secured.
I'll ask the Sergeant what his understanding was. Sergeant, firstly, you've told us that you don't recall ever reading that particular paragraph, but did you have any understanding that the notebook, when at any stage, should be handed to the member in charge of the section?
I did, and that's upon a member leaving the police.
I see. So
up until that time, you kept them safe and secure, and upon leaving, you would hand them to the officer in charge of your station. They would then be trimmed. I don't know what really that means, and they would be archived. But up until that time, you kept you didn't hand your notebooks to anyone.
in terms that can come down now, thank you. In terms of keeping them safe and secure, I take it that you understood I withdraw that. What was your understanding as to how you were to do that?
Well, generally, I'd have like a cardboard box or something like that, or just utilise the top shelf of the locker, and that's where they would stay.
Did you ever receive any instructions that keeping your notebook safe and secure involved putting them in your notebook? Putting them in your locker?
No, I don't think so.
So was it your understanding that members can decide for themselves how to keep their notebook safe and secure?
I think that's the expectation, that they keep it safe and secure, and they do. You're not. Yeah, I think that was the answer to your question.
In relation to any of the officers underneath you of inferior rank or your subordinates, have you ever inquired of them where they keep their notebooks?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you not consider that that was ever part of your responsibility?
I may have had conversations with new constables as a sergeant, but I can't remember any, but I certainly don't remember any conversations about keeping notebooks safe.
Sergeant, I want to suggest to you that the story that you have set out in your most recent statement as to losing your notebook, which covered the period between May and September 2019, is made up. That is, that you are lying about that. What do you say to that?
That's not correct.
That notebook would have outlined the circumstances of your use of force that you were texting Constable Rolfe about in September 2019. Is that right?
I don't know. I couldn't answer. I don't know.
You gave evidence starting from page 2389 about that use of force and what you recall it to be. I'm not going to go through the whole of that evidence again, but what you said at that page of the transcript when you were asked about what happened is that you're not 100% sure. It was possibly a trucking yard. I don't know what the job was, how I got called there, but I've ended up there and in a foot chase. I don't know what the offending was or what had been reported. You don't know whether or not you turned your body-worn video on for the foot chase. You don't think the person was arrested. You think that you were shouting at the chap in the truck yard. You go on to say you jumped a couple of fences. You were asked what happened and you said, I kind of not really tackled him, but I grabbed him as we're running and we crashed into a shed. I can't remember the conversation. I remember shouting. He was shouting at me, calling me whatever, and I was shouting at him. You accepted that that was a use of force, tackling him into a garden shed, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And you accepted that he was detained at that period of time, correct?
Correct.
And you gave evidence that it was likely to be a matter where you would have filled out a use of force incident report. You recall that?
No, but if I said that, I'll take that.
Transcript page 2391, you were asked, and is that likely to be a matter where you would have filled out a use of force incident report? And you say, yeah, I don't, yeah, yep. Sergeant, the officers in charge of this inquest have looked carefully at the use of force incidents. There is nothing to indicate a use of force by you, that is a use of force incident report sheet filled out at any time leading up to those text messages of September 2019. You accept that?
Yeah, okay.
Did you fail to write up a use of force report because you wanted to cover up having lost your temper at that time?
Object.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
In fairness, I'm going to suggest something to you and ask you for your response to it. I suggest to you, Sergeant, that the evidence you gave about an incident in a truck yard was made up by you to cover up a more serious use of force by you at that time. What do you say to that?
No, not true.
Claudia Campagnaro is an individual who had a romantic relationship with Constable Rolfe in 2018. Did you ever meet her?
I did.
Was she an officer who you were in charge of? That is, you were a senior rank to her?
Yeah, a senior member. I wasn't a sergeant at that time.
Were you a senior constable in 2018?
Yeah, correct.
You were somebody who was in a position, that is, you were based in Alice Springs, is that right?
Correct.
The position,
I don't know when I worked with her, but yeah.
In the position of senior constable, you're setting an example, aren't you, for constables who are junior in rank to you, correct?
Correct.
And particularly, of course, for probationary constables who are just learning about their profession within the Northern Territory Police Force.
Correct.
When Claudia Campagnaro gave evidence in this court, She gave evidence about the use of racist language by a number of officers in the Alice Springs police station in the year that she was a police officer. And she was asked about the names of those who were using the language. She was asked, what about Sergeant Paul Kirkby? Was he somebody who freely used racist terms? And she said, yes, he was. What do you say about that?
She's mistaken.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant, my name is Bolton. I'm asking questions on behalf of the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency.
Afternoon.
Hi. Sergeant, the text messages that were the subject of questioning last time between you and Mr. Rolfe, dated the 3rd of September 2019, which you described in your evidence relating to an incident that was comprehensively described. I just want to check, did you actually write something about that incident in the notebook that you had at that time?
I don't know. I don't know.
Did you, as a matter of your normal course, make entries in a notebook when you used force on someone in the community?
I would say yes.
You'd say yes. So it was your normal practice to make an entry in your notebook every time you used force against a citizen. Is that your evidence?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
How much detail would you put in your notebook when you used force against a citizen?
Sometimes not too much. Name, their date of birth, where it was, what maybe a quick précis of what had happened.
Would you then make a formal use of force entry on a form?
Or someone would, whoever was involved, and they would put people who were involved. So it might not necessarily be me.
Are you suggesting that there might be a use of force form in existence that the police assisting the coroner haven't located yet that describes your use of force sometime at or around the 2nd or 3rd of September 2019? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was just saying that if you can be involved in something and sometimes force is used, but you may not be the member who actually puts the use of force in. You may just have your name included as, I think there's a, as you're doing it, it's drop down boxes and you would outline who is involved and what happened. It would have other officers involved.
Right, well, assuming that has been searched for, the drop down document that you just described.
The use of force.
The use of force document.
Yeah.
That would have your name on it as the man who pushed somebody into a fence on the relevant occasion. Presume that's been looked for and it hasn't been located. The coroner is likely to conclude there is no such use of force form. What I want to ask you then is, you would be certain, because of your normal practice, that you would have made a note of that use of force, your use of force, in your own notebook, right?
There may have been. I don't know.
Well, that's what you normally do.
That's what I normally do, but okay. I don't know.
So, having regard to the evidence that you're aware of from Mr. Limbury, you do you say that the conversation referred to in his particular affidavit relates to the washing of the notebook that you have described in your evidence, do you? You only had one notebook washed?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, correct.
That conversation described by Mr. Limbury is about the notebook that your wife washed, right?
Correct.
And that, if we accept what he has to say, was sometime before the 25th of November 2021, right?
Correct.
And as we understand your evidence, on the occasion, according to his evidence, that what prompted the conversation was you being on duty with him and you picking pieces of paper off the front of your shirt, right?
Correct.
And your evidence tells us that when you realised that your wife had washed your notebook, there was evidence of the fact of the washing because the paper from the notebook had disintegrated into pieces about the same size as grains of sand. Is that right?
Correct.
And was it little grains of sand sized bits of paper that you were picking off your shirt when Mr. Limbury and you discussed what was on your shirt?
I don't know. I couldn't actually remember the picking the pieces of paper. I couldn't remember that, but that's what he said, so I took that. I had other shirts and they were covered in it, so.
Little grains of sand sized bits of paper.
Yeah, it looked like paper mache.
Some paper mache can be massive, but this is like sands through the hourglass. Is that right?
Correct.
I want to ask you about your understanding of the frequency with which your fellow officers experienced problems with their notebooks. How many times did you ever hear about a police officer losing a notebook, destroying a notebook, washing a notebook, or anything like that? How often have you ever heard of it?
Since this has come out quite regularly.
All right. What about before this inquest? How often had you heard of it before the inquest?
Yeah, would have heard people losing their notebooks and.
Did you ever hear of it when you were supervising police? Or anything like that? Did you ever hear of anyone losing a notebook or destroying a notebook when you were supervising the police officer?
No, I've put one through the wash previously, but.
So this is not the first time. Was this the second or third or fourth one? How many notebooks have you or your family washed?
2.
Righto. And when was the first one?
I don't know. It was I was
approximately
2015, Alice Springs, maybe 2013. I don't know.
Righto. Did you make any record of that one having been washed?
No.
Did you tell anyone why you needed a new one?
I don't recall.
Is there any...
I think I was still able to use the first one that got washed.
Oh, so it
or I was
wasn't
still able to read
destroyed.
it.
So
It wasn't destroyed, it was washed.
it was only partially washed. It was clean,
Well,
but not
washed,
destroyed.
but it was fully washed.
Fully washed, but usable. You
I wouldn't say usable, but yeah, the pages were stuck together and it didn't disintegrate.
Did you continue to use it?
I don't know. A lot of the pages were stuck together.
Right.
We might call for all of the 9 notebooks. We might have the one that's stuck together.
So, did you keep the one that was stuck together?
I haven't got 3, I think. My notebook starts in 2015, Your Honour. I started in 2013, so there's some missing at the start.
Well, the one that got washed with pages stuck together, not completely destroyed, that one you think was damaged in 2014 or 15? Is that what you said?
13, 14,
13,
14.
13, right.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
That's all right. So, you know the coroner has just called for the production of all of your notebooks.
Yep.
And then I asked you whether or not we're likely to see any of them with their pages stuck together. Are we going to see any with their pages stuck together?
No, I don't think so.
Why's that?
When I went out bush, the station, the Alice Springs station moved from the old station to across the road. When I returned in 2016, my early notebooks had been in a locker or in a filing cabinet.
Yeah.
And they've gone, the early notebooks have gone.
Well, have they been reported missing, discarded, or in any way drawn to the attention of your superiors?
I probably said that, where are the notebooks from across the station, or is there anything being collected from across the station? But no, I don't remember any particular conversation. I don't know how many notebooks there were.
You explained that you've only had your notebook inspected once in your entire career.
Correct.
Have you heard about other people ever having their notebooks inspected by superior officers?
No.
Would it be your evidence that it would be the rarest event for any other officer to inspect a police officer's notebook?
I object to that. That's not a question this witness can answer. A rare event for other police officers to inspect other police officers' notebooks. He can only speak from his own experience. He's given that evidence. It's an unfair question and burden to put on this witness.
Well, I'll limit it to his experience.
That's all I'm doing.
Mr. Bolton.
Yes, you are.
I mean, he's in police stations, I
Yes,
assume he sees, and if people are regularly inspecting notebooks, that would be something that would be common and just a regular course. Likewise, if someone came and inspected and only happened once every 25 years, people might remember it.
So keeping in mind Her Honour's remarks in that ruling.
Sorry, I couldn't actually hear them.
Okay, so given that you've been a police officer for so long and that you go to work every day and that you're in amongst a whole lot of other police officers, all of whom are supposed to carry a notebook, given that you've only been asked to produce yours once for an inspection, have you ever heard of anyone else having their notebooks inspected?
No, not off the top of my head.
Righto. And you never seen anyone else inspect the notebook?
No.
So when counsel assisting asked you whether or not you'd read the relevant operational order, you said you don't think you ever read it. And when you were shown the inside cover of a notebook and asked whether you'd ever read the instructions, you said you'd never read them either.
No, I think I said for the general order, I think I said I read it a week or two ago. So, but that was the only time.
Apart from a week or two ago, you've never read it until a week or two ago, and you've never read the inside of your own notebooks. How come? Is it a bit hard, or what's the story?
I fill the notebooks in. I don't read there's half a dozen pages at the end with different information in. I'm not sure if I've read all of that. It's got some telephone numbers in it, and it's got some acronyms in it.
Sergeant.
But I've never really read the notebook.
Sergeant, you were in charge of Darwin Police Station for a while. Did you read any general orders or operational orders?
Probably in regard to different things.
Some?
Yeah, probably.
Probably some. Can you remember reading any?
No, I can't remember which ones I read, but I imagine I referred to some.
Referred to them? Okay. In your recent statement, you said that you're on a return to work plan, that you're not currently operational, and that you're working in the Judicial Policy Office. What is the Judicial Policy Office?
Well, my role there is just when the files come through, prosecution files come through, I will get those, I'll read those files, make sure the correct charges are laid, make sure that the evidence is there.
So you've got an important role in determining what evidence gets put before a court. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct.
Fine. That's all I was going to ask.
I have 1 minute of questions, if I may.
Yes, Mr McMahon.
Sergeant Kirkby, my name is McMahon. I chair the Parenthood Committee, which is a justice committee from Indonesia. Do you have a notebook with you now in your pocket?
No.
How come?
I haven't. I don't use a notebook at this point in time.
The notebook that you are using from time to time, you have one that you use from time to time, is that correct?
I haven't started one since 2021.
Since the washing, since the laundry?
The wrecked one, I haven't got a new one. No.
Can you say that again?
No, since the one got washed, I haven't started a new one.
So since the laundering of the notebook, there hasn't been a new one?
No, correct.
All right. So just to be clear, when you said in your statement and in your evidence today, pardon me, when you said in your evidence last time in court that the notebook was washed in your shirt, you meant that it was washed in your shorts, is that right?
In my trousers, my pants.
In your trousers?
Yeah.
And did you tell Dr. Dwyer today that you'd only ever washed one notebook?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't recall.
Earlier today when you said that you had washed one notebook earlier in about 2014 and 2015, I take it from your subsequent answers you meant that you actually washed in about 2013 and 2014.
Yeah, it was early on.
Did you change your answer there just because you began to realise that people in this court would be interested in seeing the notebook that was washed but not destroyed?
No, I was on the point of sale, the posse. I couldn't remember the date. It was 13, 14. I don't know.
But you know, it was.
I don't know the exact date.
You know,
it would be prior to 2015 because my the notebooks that I have, the 9, I think it starts sometime in 2015. So.
How do you know that the one that was previously washed is not one of those?
Sorry, say again.
How do you know that the one that was previously washed years ago is not one of the 9 that you currently possess?
It kind of blew up. It expanded, so it's quite easy to see.
When you're Sergeant Lindbergh, he a friend of yours?
Who, sorry?
Sergeant, is it Lindbergh, the fellow who makes a statement about you having washed Lindbergh?
Sergeant Lindbergh.
He a friend of yours?
Yeah.
Did you tell him that you had washed the notebook?
Yeah, must have.
And in your statement for these proceedings, the most recent statement, you've said that it seems that your wife has not washed the notebook. Which one of those answers is... Which one of those people washed the notebook, you or your wife?
My wife.
And when she washed the notebook, this was in November 2021, did you discuss that with her?
Yes.
Has she made a statement? Objective.
No.
It's not for this witness to answer that.
Well, I guess he's being asked, do you know whether or not she's made a statement? I think the answer is that he does know and she hasn't, but maybe that can be clarified.
Is that the situation?
Your Honour's correct. No, my wife hasn't made a statement.
Why did you tell Sergeant Limbury that you had washed the notebook?
Well, I don't think I said I washed the notebook. I think I said the notebook had been washed.
His evidence is in his statement. He says, Sergeant Kirkby told me he had washed his notebook. Do you think what do you say to that? He says in his statement, Sergeant Kirkby told me he had washed his notebook.
Okay, I think it's neither here nor there.
Okay.
The notebook got washed.
Yeah. You told everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say earlier today that you told everyone at the station that you'd washed your notebook?
No, just in the admin room. I don't know if there are other people there, but I imagine I would have said, made light of it.
At the time that you washed the notebook, were you worried that there was something in the notebook that would incriminate you down the track?
No, I was a bit upset because there was some recent things in there that I wanted.
To give evidence in another proceeding?
Correct.
Yeah. And finally, the gentleman who was crashed into the shed, on that occasion, you've given evidence about, I'm not going to go over it, but on that occasion, correct me if I'm wrong, your body-worn camera was off, is that correct?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I don't recall.
The name of the gentleman you crashed into the shed, do you remember his name?
I don't recall.
And do you remember making any record ever in any place of the name of the gentleman who was crashed into the shed?
No, I don't recall.
No. All right, thank
you. Any further questions?
I don't have any questions, unless anybody else has, but just in relation to the production of the notebooks.
Yes.
Obviously, I can't produce them as a conduit. They can be provided to Superintendent Morgan, I take it, so that they can be kept in proper custody and produced to the
Thank you. There's one issue that arises following from the statement of Janelle Tonkin, if I might be permitted to ask it, and somebody else might have a question that follows.
Yes.
In the statement of Janelle Tonkin, she notes this at paragraph 10, that an internal broadcast reminding officers of the obligations with respect to notebooks was sent out to all sworn officers on the 19th of October 2021. I've now obtained a copy of that email from Superintendent Morgan with that date, and I'll tender that. Do you recall receiving any internal broadcast in relation to the archiving and storage of notebooks, journals and diaries in October 2021?
I don't recall it, but I grabbed a copy today. I found a copy.
I see. So when you read a copy of that today, is that right?
Correct.
And would you have read it around the time that it came out in October 2021?
I may have skimmed it. I don't recall.
Is it your practice to read internal broadcasts that are sent to all officers?
It's not my practice to read all of them.
Why not?
Some I might decide aren't relevant to myself.
But do you think that there's an expectation from the Northern Territory Police Force that you will read all emails that are addressed to sworn officers?
I don't know.
This email reminds officers of their record-keeping obligations under the Information Act 2002, and it reminds officers of the note-taking notebooks and diaries general order. When you read that today for the purpose of giving evidence, did it refresh your memory in relation to something you'd read previously?
No.
The email notes that journals and diaries must be kept forever. They've got permanent retention requirements. That was something you already knew, is that right?
No, journals and diaries have never really concerned me. I've just had notebooks. The CIV detectives have the journals and diaries, and senior officers.
If you read this internal broadcast in 2021, it would have prompted you, wouldn't it? Or it would have been fresh in your memory, that is the record-keeping obligations in relation to notebooks, correct?
Would have refreshed my memory, correct.
And then at some point when your notebook went through the wash, either before or after that date, you would have thought to yourself, well, that's going to be significant given my record-keeping obligations.
No, I don't know. It never doesn't actually say anything about what to do with a destroyed or lost. I went looking to see if there was what I should have done, but no, general order doesn't say if a notebook is lost or destroyed what to do.
What it does say, that is this email broadcast, is that the subheading is where should your notebooks, journals and diaries be stored, in bold. And it notes that as per section 61 of the note-taking, notebooks and diaries general order, all completed notebooks or diaries should be retained and kept in safe storage by the individual member. Goes on to say all completed records are not to be removed from the Northern Territory Police Force workplace. You knew about that?
The completed ones?
Yes.
Correct. That's why they would have been in a locker or in my duty bag if I was between stations.
But is it your evidence that you thought that non-completed notebooks, that is active notebooks, you were free to take home and take back to work at any time?
I object if council could read order or paragraph 63 of the general order, which answers or negates the whole question. There's no proper basis for a question which is premised on...
I will do. I withdraw the question. Paragraph 63 says members should leave their notebook or diary at the station if they're going to be off duty for an extended period in case it's required for reference during their absence. Arrangements should be made with the relevant OIC to store the notebooks or diaries in a secure but accessible location. Members, however, may retain their notebooks or diaries between shifts and over rostered days off to allow them to move between stations and duties. So it's your what did you understand from that as to whether or not you could take your notebook home between shifts?
Yeah, if I was using my notebook, if it was still active, I would take it home. If it was my practice to take my uniform home, then my notebook would be in my uniform.
That's provided it was your practice to carry your notebook in your pocket at that time. Is that right?
Correct. If I was in a role where I needed a notebook.
Nothing further, Your Honour.
No other questions? Yes. Thank you, Sergeant or Senior Sergeant Kirkby. We'll break the link now.
Thank you.
And that completes the evidence for today. Just before we leave, the plan for tomorrow is...
We only have one witness, Your Honour, because of the disruption in relation to Constable Rolfe's evidence, because he was scheduled to give evidence for 3 days starting from today. So we have been able to kindly, well, that is due to the good grace and patience of Senior Constable Brad Wallace. He will come tomorrow. He was available today also because we weren't anticipating that the arguments would go for so long. So he's kindly agreed to make himself available tomorrow. On Friday, we have Senior Sergeant Barham.
And we're starting at 9:30 tomorrow?
Yes, Your Honour. And I just indicate for the benefit of my learned friends that I had finished asking questions of Senior Constable Brad Wallace. So he's being made available again so that they might complete their questioning.
Yes, because on the last occasion, everyone only had one question at the end of the day. But if you've got additional questions, tomorrow will be the opportunity to ask them.
Thank you.
Your Honour, just before you finish for your information, there's been communication from the Supreme Court which indicates that Her Honour Justice Brownhill is intending to relist for hearing in respect of the Section 38 matter at 10 a.m. on Wednesday the 23rd, setting it down at that stage for 2 days.
Thank you. We'll adjourn.
All stand. Coronial Court now stands adjourned.
I'm going to rush. I want to talk to you in a second. I have to rush.
We need to, they need to notify me. Can you draft?